All right. So again, sorry I was out Monday, couldn't be helped. So we'll extend the due date from Tuesday to Friday of next week. Just so you have one more office day to ask me questions. So if online, so you can email me or you can ask me questions in person, whatever we need to do. That being said, I want to go over the project with you today. I am videotaping it. I also have it videotaped from last year, so if the audio freaks out on me, I will post those. But anyway, I'm going to go over the project in detail, the whole spec sheet, and then I'm going to actually help you do part one. I am not going to record, I have no intentions of recording part 2 or 3 right now. And never record part 3. Part 3 is always the challenge on your own. So we're going to do part 1 today. We're going to go over the specs. Friday in class, I will do what I normally do and answer questions and things like that. If we're hung up really, if all of you are hung up on one particular part, I'll turn on the recording and we'll walk through that and give it to the online students as well. But otherwise, it'll be a question and answer kind of situation. All right. So if you haven't already, you should have looked at the Word doc. Why did I put it in as a Word doc and not a PDF? Because it's just easier on me. This doesn't mean that you can go in and change your own specs. I'm still going to grade you off of the one you download because everybody has it. I do have a few people that think they're clever. They try to convince me that I posted something that's wrong. Been posting the same thing for a year. It's not changed. All right, if you find a typo in it, let me know. I'll try to fix those. If it says Moodle anywhere, just insert course in your head and go on. Because all the other computer science classes but this one use Moodle, so sometimes I flip-floppy them. All right, the objectives are pretty clear. I want you to use all the things that we've taught so far. I want you to think of an algorithm or a plan on how you're going to do this. I want you to define and use functions. I want you to be able to use iterative incremental development and composition when writing an application, which is a fancy way of saying I want you to take your time. I want you to do one part at a time, and I want you to step through it. Don't try to write all the code before you test it. Increment means little bitty pieces. Iterative means cycle through things. Right? So we're going to use for loops. We're going to use functions. We're going to use our turtles. We're going to use a lot of our turtles. We're going to write our own functions. We're going to import and use functions that somebody else wrote. So, questions so far? Good. So it's broken into 3 parts. Part 1 is 74 points. And I just told you I was going to walk you through the majority of part 1. There's no reason that every person in this class should not get 74 points by the time I'm finished today, or at the very least by the time we're finished Friday. That's my goal. Now, if you don't watch the videos and you don't pay attention to me in class and you just say, I can wing it on my own, you might not get 74 points. All right, part 2 and part 3 are worth 14 and 12 points respectively. So part 2 is 14 more points. Part 3 is 12 more points. You may choose not to do part 2 and part 3. That is completely your decision. Less grading for me. I don't care. If you say, hey, I'm happy with a C, I'm just going to take a C. I wouldn't suggest it. I would at least attempt some of the others. I will say this, there is no point in starting part 3 if you did not finish part 2. They build on each other. So part 1, get it working 100% correctly. Then move to part 2. Get that working. Then move to part 3. Get as many points as you can on the easy stuff before you go frustrate yourself with the hard stuff. Do not share your code. This means if somebody in the class says, I can't get this to work, don't go, oh, I'll email you mine. Don't do it. I will catch you. It's pretty clear when I get multiple people turning in exactly the same code. Because coding is like writing an English paper. You all have a style. And after I've graded a few things, I go, this is better code or worse code than they normally write. Why? And I do sit down and try to grade them all at the same time. So I'll do all of part 1 for everybody because I grade more. I feel like I grade more fairly that way than if I do 5 today and 5 tomorrow because I forget what I get partial credit for. So after I've read a few, I'll figure it out. Don't cheat. You're only hurting yourself if you are. If you get away with it, don't tell me. Yes, people do brag if they get away with that. People are not brag. It's okay. Part 1 and part 2, you can ask me for help. You can ask. I actually will even say you can ask your neighbors for help on part 1 in here. Just don't write each other's code. Part 1 and 2, though, you can just discuss it with me. You can also ask any of the CSX lab assistants to help you. And the lab is right over here, diagonally across from the elevator. It says STEM lab, but there's computer science in the back. They can help you. I can help you. The only person you should ask about part 3 is me. You can send me emails. I was answering emails last night at midnight. I don't know why, but I was. I got emails already this morning. So send me emails. I will try my darndest to email you back ASAP, but generally within 24 hours. Sometimes on the weekend it takes me a little longer, but all that's on my syllabus too. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to see what you know on part 3, not what your friends know. Because it is a challenge. All right. So obviously you have to get idle going. You have to name your project correctly. I don't know why it says project 4 in the example in one place and project 1 in the other. This is project 1. Do not put Sally Mae, put your name. Happens every year. All right, so this is what we're going to be doing. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Ooh, that was a lot bigger. All right, so in part 1, you are going to create this. It's 4 boxes that are filled in with your initials on. Boy, this sounds a lot like stuff we did in lab assignment 4, right? So you've done everything, not necessarily in this particular pattern. You've done everything you need in assignment 4 to be able to do part 1. So, and part 1 is just like your labs. It actually walks you through step by step how to do it. If it gives you a specific function name for you to create, it has to be named exactly what you were told. Why? Because that's what the directions say. And computer science is very direction driven. And I'm going to be looking for those keywords. And if they're not there, I'm going to take off points. Right? So we're going to have a draw filled square, which is a function that's going to draw a square that's filled in a color. Filled square is going to take a turtle, a size, and a color. That way you can use it for every size square. You're gonna pass in whatever turtle you create in Maine. Draw. We did something similar in assignment 4, correct? Got a lot of people just staring at me like I have 3 heads. Okay. It's going to walk you through the steps to do that. You're going to use the fill color, begin fill, end fill, those things from Turtle. You're going to have a draw picture function that was like draw bus that's going to create your screen and your turtle. And then it's going to call that. This should be all going, oh, I'm glad I did the bus, right? Perform box trot is going to be in there. I did not come up with these names. I promise you, I didn't do it. But you're going to use that to start doing some of the drawing. And this is where you're going, this function is going to put the 4 squares on the screen. Right? Once you get the 4 squares all drawn correctly, because you are going to verify, save, and run before you move to the next step because the directions say so. I know you all read the directions, right? All the female students are going, yes, and most some of the males, but some of the others are just staring at me like directions. What do I need directions for? Read the directions. All right. Then you're going to draw your initials, and your initials are going to be divided up in your first initial and your last initial. So you will have a function for each one. And then you will call them and draw a picture. Again, your initials could be boxy letters. Don't try to get all fancy and do curves and stuff. If you want to and you have time, yes, there's ways to do it, and you're welcome to go spend the time on it. But I'm okay with really boxy letters. And then once you've done that, you have successfully completed all of part 1, which should be a piece of cake. And we're going to do some of it in here before you leave. I'm not doing your initials in class today. You're on your own drawing your initials. But I'm going to try to get you through the boxes before we leave class today. Part 2 is going to add some to it. There's this gray mat around the edge, and then there's a border of triangles around that. So you have to write a function to draw a triangle, and then you're going to call that function multiple times to make the border around the triangle. I'm going to give you a hint. Don't try to draw it in one single function. Make the easiest way to do it is to do the top and the bottom horizontal row, and then the left and the right as vertical rows, and to try to draw it all in one continuous pattern all the way around. Now, I have a few students that have done it. They wanted a challenge. They beat their head against the proverbial wall to get it done. And it's beautiful code. Sometimes it's a hodgepodge code. You're not getting any more points for doing it the hard way than if you do it the simple way. I will tell you that there is a little math involved here. When you're trying to draw a triangle, you have to know the angles of a triangle. And remember, a squared plus b squared equals c squared is the length of the diagonal. My math majors on the front row are going. So if you run into a little trouble there, you're welcome to ask some math questions. If I can't answer them, one of the young ladies up here might be willing to help you, and any other math major in here might be willing to help you. Oh, they're pointing at each other. Okay, right. Ask me. I'm just the help you need. All right. So this is going to be broken down into parts 2. So there's another hint here that says think about drawing the mat first. And everybody, well, most everybody jumps to the conclusion that I need to draw this little thin gray border. If you think about how our turtles work, and when you draw things, it does things from the back forward, you know, you draw on top of each other. So I'm gonna tell you the truth. If you just drew a great big gray square that's slightly bigger than what all 4 of your other squares are first, and then put your squares on top of it, you have matted it. Now, if you want to figure out how to put a little bitty border all the way around it, again, feel free to do it the hard way, but you're not getting any more points for it than if you just put a big gray square there first and then drew your others on top of it. This is order of operations, right? Yeah, we did the 4 squares in part 1, but that doesn't mean that you can't call draw filled square again or before you do that in your draw picture, because we're adding to our code or modify. And y'all are all going to forget this, and you're going to go back and watch the videos because that's why they're there. That's the reason I have like 25 or less hits on all of my videos, because 75 of you are watching it repeatedly to make sure you're getting all the information. Yeah. All right. You're going to add a function to draw a triangle. It is a right triangle. I did that specifically because a right triangle is easier to figure the math out on than a lot of the other triangles for distances and stuff. Remember that your function only has a single responsibility, so it should only draw a triangle. It shouldn't draw a triangle and the mat, right? Don't repeat yourself. So remember how we use loops instead of repeating code. Remember to use your loops and stuff effectively. After you've done that, you can add a comment to the top that says, also successfully completed part 2. That lets me know how far I'm grading. I can't stress this enough. I would go ahead once I get each part done and upload it to ForStem. You know, you can name the file Project 1, Part 1, upload it. Project 1, Part 2, upload it. Project 1, Part 3, upload it. I'm going to grade the last thing you submit, but if you have uploaded it and then God forbid something happens to your computer at home, or you can't get back to the computer you were working on and have it saved on, you can always download it and start working on it again. I'm old school. I'm going to tell you to save often, and make a copy somewhere, because it never fails. Murphy's Law. If your computer decides to die, it's going to die in the middle of something really important. Never fails. All right. So that's part 2. Part 3 is going to take it one step further. And you're going to go look up how to use random in the API. It's really not that hard. And you're going to make each triangle a random color. I have at least one petrified looking at me. It's not as hard as it sounds. This is actually something you can do in the for loop after you get the border going. Why is somebody shaking their head? Oh, it'll be okay. It's not as hard as it sounds. All you need to do is look up random, change your color mode to take the 3 RGB values instead of the word pink, red, whatever, and just have it put a random number into the 3 number spots, and then you get a random colored triangle. So that tells me, since I've read through all this, that I probably don't want to pass in a color to my triangle. I want the triangle later to define its own colors internally. So by reading through this, I've saved myself a step for part 2, and now I'm going to just make my filled triangle take a turtle and a size. Or maybe not. Maybe you know you want this triangle to be exactly that size all the way around. Makes it less useful. But for our purposes here, you could just do all the math in the function. that make sense? Okay. Don't stress about part 3 until you have part 2 done. This is why I said don't even try to start part 3 if you don't have part 2 working perfectly. The second part of part 3 is to go look up the stamp function and use it to make your initials instead of drawing them out. And what that does is if you can't see it, but that means there's a whole bunch of little turtles making the letters up here. Again, unless part 1 and part 2 work perfectly, I would not attempt part 3. Now, what happens if you get part 3, and you get the random colors working, but you don't get the stamp working? Then you get partial credit. I'm not going to say all of it has to work or no credit. That's not me at all. Everything you get working, you will get partial credit for. But I'm not grading part 3 if you didn't get part 2 working. So don't go, oh, I can't get the triangle border working. I'm just going to skip to the stamp thing. Part 3. I'm not doing that. Part 2 first, then part 3. That makes sense? All right. So do y'all want to write some code now? And what I just did, I do for every project I have ever worked on through my schooling and my career. If I had a programming project, the first thing I always do is I take the directions or the specification and I read the entire thing. Because I'm going to tell you, get to industry, users contradict themselves before they get to the end. And if you're doing it just a piece at a time without having read the whole thing, you might not have needed something you wrote, or you might have needed to add something earlier. So always read through the specs before you start. I'm old, so I would print them out, grab a pencil, highlighter or something, and I would start circling key parts. But remember, nouns are usually objects like your turtles. Verbs are usually functions or actions that the objects are going to do if you're ever reading through them. I know, I just brought English into computer science and you all hate me for that, but that's okay. So we're going to go get a new file open. And I'm going to go ahead and save as. All right, so I'm going to get this up and running. I still have people turning in the shell. Do not turn in the shell window. I am not grading them anymore. So remember, file, open, new file. All right, so in here, let me go get my Word doc. Well, I closed my Word document. I was not thinking. So Word document. I started idle. I created a file. Part 1. I want to define my main and add a print statement. I know I'm working with turtles, so my brain's telling me to do my import too. So I'm gonna go ahead and do import turtle because that's just the way my brain works. Then I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna do df main. And if you want to put blank spaces in to separate sections of code, that doesn't bother me at all. My old eyes appreciate that because if you give me just code with no lines in it, I have to work really hard to read it. So we're going to define our main, and I'm going to start off with a print statement. And if you're a real stickler for punctuation and stuff, feel free to capitalize and add proper punctuation. I've been texting too long, everything's in lowercase. I will not count off for you putting everything in lowercase. And I will not count off for misspelled words in print statements. So I created my main. I put a lot of space between it and the call to main because I want to start writing all my code between the two. That's how I make sure I don't forget this call at the end. You'll be amazed how easy it is to forget to call main, and then you run it and it does nothing. And you're like, why is it not doing anything? If it does absolutely nothing when you go to run it, check and see if you have the word, the function call to main as the last line of your code. If you put code after the main function call, it's not going to work the way you think it's going to work, because it's going to do all the main stuff first, and then it may or may not run those extra lines of code down. All right, next. We imported the turtle module already. We're going to write a function called draw fill square. It's going to take a turtle, a size, and a color. Right? Guess what draw fill square is going to do? It's going to draw square. It's going to be filled in. All right. So who wants to tell me how I want to start? Yes. Yes, I can do that. I should have done it begin with. Can you read it now? Y'all yell at me when I forget to make the font bigger for the back of the room. Oh no, it's really hard to see all the way back there.
No, wait.
Yeah, but the TVs are tiny, so yeah. Feel free to take pictures of anything I do on the board. I don't care if you want to grab your cell phones and take pictures of stuff. That doesn't bother me at all. And you also can go back to these videos and watch them and zoom in and zoom out. All right, so we need to use the fill color function, the begin fill, the end fill, all that to draw our square. Who remembers how to do fill color? Okay, tell me what somebody tell me what I'm typing. Turtle dot in.
I don't, the first parenthesis. Fill color. Like that.
It's one of the weird ones, yeah. And that's it.
Equal whatever color you want to do, but like I don't know what part you want to. Okay.
Actually, we're not going to put anything in here. We're going to put color.
Okay, yeah, I did that. I just didn't know what you said too.
Now, that's one way to do it. Yeah. You can. All right. So how do you want to do it? But if you notice, the directions tell you to use fill color.
Yeah, and then stop fill color. And it says color. That's how my code is.
Okay. Can't you do something like this for fill color? Can you? My Java and my Python are running together right now, so yeah.
I'm a bit confused because I have it written down as turtle.color or as a parameter for that, and then turtle.
If you do turtle.color, you change the color of the turtle and the pen it's dragging. We're talking about just the fill.
I've been using that one, it takes two parameters. The first parameter is the turtle color, the second one is the fill color. I've just been keeping the turtle. color
Okay,
active.
so the point I'm trying to make here is there's several different ways to do this. I would prefer you to use the fill color one since it is in the directions. You can argue with me. You arguing with me. I have no problem with that. I have teenagers at home. She's met one of them. That what I'm trying to say is there are more than one ways to do this. And I am not going to count you off as long as the colors come out right.
Okay, that's actually a little better.
And you're gonna find that some things work better than others. It just depends on what you're doing. So if you want your turtle still to be its color, then you don't want to change all of it. So I'm going to do it this way for right now. Now, what I'm writing up here may not be exactly what you write. Correct? Because I'm just typing code off the top of my head. So we're going to test it, make sure it works. You can go right or you can go left. Doesn't matter as long as you remember how you're drawing your square. One means you're drawing the square starting at the top and going down. One means you're drawing at the bottom and going up. So I'm going to test this to see if this works by putting I did the screen first. And this is not going to stay here. This is just for me to test right now. Right? Does that make sense? And this is what I mean by incremental. So I drew a turtle, but I didn't fill it because I didn't end my fill. To make y'all feel better that even I forget things.
Yeah.
No, you don't indent.
No, I said in the end.
Oh,
And
gosh, I'm sorry. I've had a really long week. I'm sorry. Now, when you get ready to do this in your draw, whatever, or your box, box trot function, you'll do your go-tos and stuff to move it to the right location. I'm just testing that my function worked as I expected it. Right? Okay. All right. So draw fill square works. Now I can move to the next thing. So it wants me to do draw picture to test. I did it up here, so that's going to make draw picture much easier. And draw picture doesn't take any parameters. And I'm just going to move this right here. Here. I can try to slow down a tiny amount, but am I going too fast for everybody else? But no, let's take a vote. Am I going, do you want me to go faster? I'm okay, or I'm going too slow? Okay, so I could go faster for most of you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not gonna speed up. But I'm not gonna slow down either.
Hey, that's the master.
So, if it was more than one person asking me to slow down, then I would, but he's right. You have access to all the YouTube videos. I would love to see you guys using the YouTube videos more. All right. So I did draw a picture. Now, the directions tell you to do draw a filled square and draw all four of the squares. Right now, I draw a picture, and then it's going to have you refactor it into its own function. I've already read the directions. I know it's going to have to go in its own function. So my brain says, why am I going to write it in one place and then refactor it somewhere else? Especially since the teacher's not going to be able to tell if I did that or not because it won't be there anymore. So I'm just going to write it in the other function. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create perform box trot. It's going to take one parameter, which is the turtle. It's going to draw all four of the boxes in their correct location, right? So I'm going to put some blank lines in solely where I can just get the code to go up the screen where y'all can see it better. Y'all don't have to put all those blank lines in. I'm just trying to move it up where y'all can see it. All right, so define. So what this function is going to do is it's going to condense down or compartmentalize, break into chunks, however you want to put it, one section of your code. So it's kind of like a helper method. It's going to draw four boxes of alternating colors where we want it. Why? Because it makes it easier when we start moving things around to just call this because we know those four boxes are the way we want them. When we get ready to do that match, behind it are the frame around it. Then we know this part works. We can just call that function and put it on top of the other stuff we'll do. Make sense? All right. Is it absolutely necessary for our code? No, we could have done this anywhere. But we're trying to show you how to do things in units. So in here, I want to figure out where I want to put my boxes, right? Right now, the turtle starts off at 0, 0 in the center. We want the boxes to be 300 pixels in size because that says so in the directions. So we need to move the turtle around to draw all of our boxes. We could draw one exactly where it's at. And then we have to move to draw the others. So you have choices here. You can either move initially and draw it. The order you do this in doesn't really matter. As long as you get the four boxes and you remember to pick the pen up and put the pen back down between the moves. My logical brain says I'm moving up to the top corner. I'm going to draw that one first. Some people like to just start where they're at. It's completely up to you. Does that make sense? So first thing I'm going to do is tell my turtle to go to, and oddly enough, it's the things we used before when we were drawing the two boxes at the top of the screen, negative 300, 300, right? And then our next turtle will just be shifted over and it will be 0, 300. And then we want to shift down and it's -300, 0. And then the last one will be 0, 0. Because math works. Okay. Now, before I do go to though, I need to tell the turtle to pick its pin up, right? And you can use up or you can use pin up, both work. Right? Up is just short of the right. Am I gonna have to like separate?
Oh, no problems, none of that, that's chill.
All right, just checking. It's entertaining, but just yeah. And then remember to put your turtle back down when you get there. And then I can all right, so that's good. That's the code to put one turtle in. I took the draw field square out of draw picture and put perform box trot into the picture. Draw picture function. Oh, I can't talk today. And I know I've only drawn one so far, or only defined one so far in draw picture, but me being me, I want to test it, make sure I haven't got a typo somewhere, or I haven't done math wrong. So I'm going to test it at this point to make sure that the first one is where I want it before I spend the time writing the code for the other ones. Now, what went wrong? I never put draw picture into the main. So it didn't do anything. So see, this is why I test things. And yes, I actually did that on purpose because I wanted you to see that if you forget to call your functions, they don't work. Still not working. So now I have an error. Oh, let's see. Let's see what my error says.
You mean an annex?
Alex.
Oh, it is.
A base?
Ah, because I copied and pasted it from somewhere else, right? I now have to change this back to turtle. These are common mistakes when you are refactoring code. Because when you start refactoring, your local variables need to change. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but each function, you have to do a form box trot.
No, form box trot is only going to be called when you need the 4 boxes drawn. So you'll probably only call it once for this whole project. So now let's run it and see if I get another error. Yay, I have a box. Now I'm going to tell you the truth. When you get to drawing this, you're going to run off this little default size window. You're going to go, I can't see it all. If you press this button right here, your window gets bigger. You also can grab your window and make it bigger. In focus, right? So don't think, oh, I ran off the window. It's okay. All right, so the blue one works. We go back over here and see blue, green, blue, green. You do not have to use blue and green. Some of you like pink and purple. Some of you will like other colors. I don't care as long as they alternate in that pattern. Does that make sense? You can use any 2 colors. Blue and green were just what were common colors that I knew were default colors. Right? I guess I should have done red and blue when we could have gone with the university thing. But I didn't, so. So this works to get me the blue one. I'm lazy, so I'm going to copy all of these lines of code. And I'm going to paste them. And I'm going to change the location. Once I turn my num lock on. And I'm going to change the color. Right? That should draw me the box next to it. Yes? And then I can paste it again. And I can change. And this one, I only have to change the location because I want it to be blue again. No, I don't. I want it to be green. I want to change it. Right. And then I'm going to paste it again. Now it should draw all 4 boxes. Now, if you don't pick up your pen, you're going to have lines drawn all over stuff. So if you got this random line going across your pretty filled square, you probably didn't pick your pen up and put it back down. Right? All right, so this is where we're at. I'm so dumb, and I thought the mat was good. I thought the mat used that part instead of like the line around, so I gotta like mat. Yeah, you got. I congratulate you for getting that far on your own. I'll tell you what, I'll make your life easier. You can reduce the size of your boxes or you can put your mat in there, but make me a note that I told you can do that.
Okay, I'll do that.
No. Do you have all the triangles already drawn? Show me. Okay, I'll do that in just a second. Yes, ma'am. Huh? Yeah, I'll go back. Okay, just a second.
Oh, I have a table.
All right, so back to the code. So if you get this done, all you have left now are your initials, right? And I just told you I wasn't going to write your initials for you, but I'll show you an example of one of the functions for an initial. We're going to use mine because T is so much easier than most letters. Okay, you first, and you. Yes.
You just called something, that was something a few minutes ago, I thought I did it, but, I want to make sure, actually. You don't remember?
I need more information.
It was a.
You want me to scroll up? Yes, that I can do.
No, it was like a few minutes ago, like, I don't know.
So your main should have this in it. And yes, before you leave, you're welcome to come up here and take pictures of everything I just wrote.
Delete
Yeah. So your main should, right now, your main should have a print statement and draw picture in it. Then you should have a function for draw filled square. Then you should have draw picture, which creates a screen, a turtle, and calls perform box trot. And then box trot should call draw square 4 times in 4 different places. Yes, sir.
Not a question. Do we have to put the word turtle? Or can we just keep it as Alex? Or any given?
Inside of the functions, it needs to be a generic. You can use Alex throughout. It absolutely will let it run that way. But every time you redefine Alex in a function, it's a different variable. It's only used for that function. It is not readable or good policy or good style to do that, because your person using the code after you doesn't know what Alex stands for. So if you want it to be a turtle, then turtle is clearer when you're reading the code. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? Am I gonna?
I try to switch back to like just turning everything to where it says turtle. It was causing issues with the code, even though I had already did the 4 boxes plus the gray border. It just basically caused more of an inconvenience for me at that.
It should not if you change the right things to turtle. I will look at your code in just a second. How about that?
Can we scroll down now, please?
Yes, we can scroll down now. How far down?
As far as, that's one.
That's one. Okay. So the next thing we need to work on is you guys' initials. If you did them for the school bus, you can absolutely go back to your file where you wrote your initials for school bus and use that as a basis to get started from, because you will have already calculated angles and things there for turning, right? Is your code, that's not cheating. You wrote your own code, go get it, use it again. I'm fixing to scroll up again. Are you guys gonna like
All right, no. Hurry, we scroll up. You got it.
take a picture? It lasts forever.
Right.
And unless you delete it, it should be there forever. All right, so now I want to do my first initial. No, your name cannot be TW today. Ah. All right, so to answer the question he was asking earlier, what he was saying is he put Alex here instead of turtle. You absolutely can do that because this variable only belongs to this function, but you don't, if you came back to this 2 weeks from now, you wouldn't know what Alex was. You wouldn't necessarily know that you needed a turtle there or a size or a color because it's not a clear name for a function name. Would you get away with it at this point, grade-wise? Yes. If you get into CS1 and you don't follow good style, you will get docked points for it. Absolutely 100%. So you should only use Alex in draw picture because that's where it's defined. So in here, I need to put my first initial in. Now, I need to guesstimate where I'm going to start that initial at, right? Because I need to go to get it where I want it. You also can change the thickness of the pen size, which you absolutely can look up. I think it's called pen size, honestly. Because the standard one's going to be very, very thin and very hard to read, especially for us old folks that need bifocals and refuse to wear them. But so you can do that. You can change the pen size. I'm also going to save you hours of frustration. There's a turtle speed. When you get started drawing all those triangles, you will sit there forever testing. Change the speed of your turtle. Put it to like 10. It'll go super, super fast. It'll be a speed racer. Honestly, when I grade these, a lot of times I will change your turtle speed. Especially if I'm trying to figure out where you went wrong. And so feel free to change your turtle speed if you want to. So I know that this corner was negative 300, 300, because I just drew the box. So I'm going to subtract 50 from each. I'm going to move it 50 pixels this way, 50 pixels this way before I start drawing my letter, just where I know it's in the box. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And honestly, I've seen people get graph paper and graph this whole thing out, figure out their coordinates, usually math majors. Or me, because I just like visual representations of everything I'm doing. But so I need so I need my turtle to go to a location. And I'm going to put negative 250 and 250 in. And this may not be exactly where I want it, but it gives me a good starting point to try it. Does that make sense? And then I'm going to tell my turtle to go forward. I don't know, maybe 100. Again, may not be long enough, but I want to test it and see what it looks like. Everybody good so far? And that should get the top row of my turtle, of my teeth, right? Yes. And then I need to move my turtle back. And I want to tell him to turn right 90 degrees. And then I'm going to have him go forward again another 100. Conveniently, I have a very easy first initial, right? Just 2 straight lines. So if I do this, does anybody see anything that I need to be concerned about? I didn't pick my pen up. So if I run this now, I'm just gonna have a line all the way across, right? So I'm gonna run it this way because I want to show you that's what's gonna happen. But before I can do that, I have to call this and draw a picture. I can't spell today. So I deliberately did not pick up the pen because I want you to see what it looks like if you don't. See, you don't pick the pen up, you got this random line. So that's a good indication that you need to go back and put pen up and pen down into your code. This also shows me that that's probably a good starting point for it, but I might want to make my initial bigger, but I don't have to because it's readable. You might want to make your pen width bigger if you want to, but that's up to you too. So I'm gonna go back and put those pen up and pen down in. A good rule of thumb while we're drawing with turtles is anytime you're going to use a go-to, you're probably going to want a pen up and a pen down on to sandwich it. Unless you're trying to just draw lines everywhere. Have I run out of time yet? No, I'm not.
About 4 minutes.
All right, so with the pen up and the pen down in there. Right. Now, I have effectively shown you how to do every part of that one. Did I write the last initial function for you? No, but you should be able to duplicate first initial, right? If I told you how to write your letters, no, but you should have accomplished that with the bus. And you'd be amazed, you might could actually copy and paste a lot of that from one file to this file. You just have to make sure that the size works, you know, you have to add some links to it. If you didn't get assignment 4 done, well, yeah, I guess you got a little extra work to do. But that's all of part 1. I'm going to end the video here unless anybody's got a technical question for me, and then I'm going to put the code back up for you guys that have not finished copying it. All right. Anybody have a question? All right, I'm going to, well, maybe.
Can you scroll up real quick?
Yes, I will scroll up. Let me see if I can get this video to. Oh,